Oh. Good Friday morning, friends. Welcome back for another episode of the Finding God in the Dark podcast. I'm Don,
I'm Jonathan.
and today we are going to talk about the 2025 Netflix film in the Knives Out series called Wake Up Dead Man. It is the Benoit Blanc is the main character, the detectives in these stories. Um, another big cast in this film.
Yeah.
So it's Daniel Craig, is Josh Brolin. Oh gosh.
Um,
Oh
uh,
my
uh,
God.
Glenn Close. Um, yeah. Yeah. Quite. It's a pretty.
I think Mindy Kaling is the detective, the sheriff, right?
It's Ashton Kutcher's wife. I can't think of her name right now.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, a
Mila
lot of familiar
Kunis. Mila
faces.
Kunis.
Jeremy Renner's in it.
Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
familiar faces, familiar
Yeah.
names.
Yeah.
Uh, the one fella, like I know his voice. He has such a distinctive voice, and I never remember his name, but I remember him being on a sitcom back in the '90s called Wings.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
Hayden Church, I think is his
Aiden
name.
Church, that's who it is. That's right. So the basic premise here is a young priest is appointed to serve in this parish, this small parish in New York. The Monsignor in the parish is murdered and go.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, there's so many. Even reading up on this movie last couple of days after I watched it, there's so many little things that you miss. Like the at the beginning of the movie, the church is called Our Lady of Perpetual Fortitude, and at
mhm,
the end of the movie, Father Judge, who remains the priest of the parish, closes it and then reopens it as Our Lady of Perpetual Grace. So like even that's like it's trying to make a statement.
yeah.
And I think that's, to me, I don't know how you feel. My guess is you probably feel similar. I love movies where the priest or the pastor is not the villain. They actually have something good to contribute, and they actually reveal that faith could be a blessing. Like that's just that always makes it, usually if I see a movie like that, I like the movie because it's just, I think that's very true. And I think for most pastors and most priests, they literally want to bring people closer to God. They want to help people grow in their spirituality. That's literally what they want to do, is they want to create a place where people feel God's grace. And so I love movies where you actually get to see a priest or a pastor actually function in that way. And Father Judd, you get to see that.
One of the priests.
Yes, 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 yes. The other priest is a jerk. Like,
Oh boy, jerk times 10. I mean, wow. And that's Josh Brolin's character. He is, I mean, literally preaches certain. Look, I'm a little bit of spoilers. We're going to
yeah,
try and stay away from giving away the plot or the mystery.
yeah,
But he literally preaches sermons every Sunday with the intent of chasing people out.
yeah. I actually had my next door neighbor at seminary actually had tapes, and he didn't know, and other people didn't know if they're real or not. But it was actually of a pastor basically pointing people out in a sermon and going like, "Why are you laughing, Bob? I know you cheated on your wife, and why are you laughing? I know you cheat your parishioners." And we never knew if these were real, but in this movie, that's literally what this Monsignor does. He literally stands up every week and picks out a vulnerable person and basically just grinds into them in front of everybody else until they leave, until they
Yep.
literally run out of the parish.
Hmm. Yeah, he's I mean that was a that was the one rough part I think of this film.
Yeah,
I would say another, and we'll get into themes in a second, but I think for me, one of the rough parts is in any good mystery film,
yeah,
you should really get enough information up front so that when the big reveal comes, you go, oh, of course, I should have seen that.
yeah.
This one kind of felt like it came out of left field. I don't know that they gave you enough up front to figure it out.
I feel like you really see it when the Monsignor reveals how much of a jerk he is. I'm trying not to use bad language here, but there's a point at which there's a church meeting, basically a council meeting in our language, in
Hmm.
Methodist language, and he basically reveals how bad he is, and in that moment, you realize that this one character who has been his stalwart for him is clearly has lost faith in him, and that ultimately is the person that is the murderer. And um, to me, then I started going, oh, okay. But yeah, I think it's interesting because I told Dawn when we talked about this movie that I was listening to just a podcast about theology that I listen to off and on, and the host had Ryan Johnson, the guy who wrote and directed this and all the Knives Out movies, on the podcast, and they talked about faith, and he talked about how he structured this story in light of the liturgy of the church, and he was raised evangelical. He's no longer a believer, but it's interesting to me because I feel like pitting two priests against each other, making one priest like everything that's wrong with religion, especially American religion, and then having the other priest kind of be the person that reminds you why the church has existed and what the function of the church is. To
Yeah.
me, it makes me wonder if he's trying to battle through how he feels about religion and how he feels about faith. But
Interesting.
that's me reading into it. But it was just interesting because really Monsignor Wicks is literally if I listed everything that was wrong with the American church, he literally checks every box. You know,
The icon of that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like going after people who are weak, and
Hmm.
looking at church as a battle against the world and not a place to serve and redeem the world. A person that's overly wants to push Christian nationalism and the idea that it's us against them, and all of these things that I really feel are hurting the church dramatically. He literally checks every box.
Yeah.
And then you have this other priest, or Father Judd, who I I am going to look. I wasn't able to find there's a blessing he gives at the end. I don't want to give everything away, but there's a blessing he gives at the end, which I thought was an amazing summation of what the church is supposed to be about and why the church should exist. And I want to find that because I think that is a wonderful little prayer, little blessing. But it basically is we're here to reconcile the world. We're here to help God reconcile the world to God. That's what we're here for. And it's not a battle in terms of people we're trying to defeat, it's people we're trying to serve so that they might be transformed in God's grace. And that idea to me is the heart of what the church is supposed to be about.
Yeah, and again, we're going to try not to give away too much of the plot line, the story, the mystery. But he does an amazing job at the finale, at the climax of this film, just demonstrating a term that resonates extremely well with us Methodists.
Yeah,
He goes on a thing about grace.
yeah,
Um, and and there's a double entendre there. There's a double mean, not a double entendre, that wouldn't be right. There's a double meaning there
yeah.
in the film, which I will leave to to those who will watch this film, which I think we can say it's worth your 2 hours and
Oh,
26 minutes.
yeah. It's
Um,
it's especially if you're a person of faith. To me, it's one of the best kind of statements about what faith can do in people's lives in positive ways that I've seen in movies for a while. So yeah, I would
I
definitely.
think I think that also Father Judd, he ends up being a really, like you said, I love when pastors don't get portrayed as buffoons or
Yeah.
bad guys, right? He ends up being this guy who's really just trying to do his best.
Yeah.
And as fault, particularly for us, right? As we recognize our own brokenness, our own fallenness,
Yeah.
just trying to do the best that we can to serve where we've been appointed, not just the people, but to serve the communities to which we've been appointed.
Right.
Um, I could really resonate with that a lot.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what do you want to, where do you want to jump on themes here, John?
Um, well, I really liked there's a monologue that Wong gives kind of critiquing the church
Hmm.
and basically going into the fact that these are stories and these are myths, which is usually something you'll hear sometimes when people are critiquing the church. And what I love is that Johnson has Father Judd respond with, yeah, there's stories, but there's stories that tell of a deeper truth. And that idea of there is power in how we tell our stories. There's power in the stories we put at the center of our lives. And that's really important to, I think, to reflect on because we all have a story that we tell about the world. And to reflect on what your story is and what the center of your story is about, I think is very valuable because sometimes we don't critique the stories we accept and we don't reflect on how they move us forward in terms of our action and how we view and help and serve other people or don't.
That's the whole thing, our stories have meaning. For those who are not familiar with the process in the UMC, we go through a very long process to become ordained pastors like Jonathan and I are.
Yeah.
And part of that is really articulating your call to ministry, understanding um, who you are. And it was a really difficult thing for me personally to embrace my story
Mm-hmm.
because my story, my call story comes out of my youth, and it was painful. My not particularly my childhood, but my youth, my early to mid-teen years and such. It was a very painful time in my life, and yet it is that very part of my story that is why I was called,
Yeah.
because there's again, I'm going to use that term, there's a resonance there, understanding of what others are going through. That's what makes you an effective pastor, and an effective leader, is having that understanding. But if you can't embrace that, if you can't say that is who I am, that's what made me who I am, you'll then you're well, you're walking around wearing a mask,
Yeah.
and I don't mean a surgical mask. I mean a face. In you're trying to be something you're not,
Yeah.
and you can't be effective clergy being something you're not.
Yeah.
You know.
And I
Um,
think I
God,
I don't to me what I will take away from this movie more than anything else is kind of a discussion about what the purpose of the church is. And to me, I think it's valuable for Christians to reflect on what the purpose of our lives is as we follow Jesus. And to me, this film is a beautiful reminder that the church adds value when we do things right and we actually follow Jesus. We do add value to people's lives through the grace of God. And and the church can be a place of healing and wholeness and forgiveness, when we do this right and we allow the Spirit to work rightly through us. And I do think that's really important because I think sometimes churches and ministers can lose sight of what this is really about, you know.
yeah,
And I really love the idea that the pushback Judd gives about this isn't a war. Yes, there is evil in the world, and yes, there is sin in the world, and we're called to combat that. But we're not, as Paul says in one of his letters, but our enemies are not flesh and blood. The people that are struggling with sin, the people that are dealing with evil in their lives, they aren't our enemies, and we shouldn't see them as our enemies. We should recognize that we're called to help God reconcile them and all of creation back to God's self. And
Yeah.
that's what this is about.
You put one of the quotes in the notes that is what Father Judd said. Christ came to heal the world, not fight it.
Yeah,
And that comes out of, early on, you find out that Father Judd's history includes him
yeah,
being a boxer
yeah,
and killing a guy in the ring.
yeah,
And so, he has this kind of concept of, no, that's not why I became a priest. It wasn't to fight the world. If I wanted to do that, I could have continued to be a boxer, you know. And it's true. We get particularly look, and I will admit this, particularly on my side of the aisle. Okay, we get that, in conservative Christianity, there's that concept of, you've got to separate yourself from the world. And I have said this over and over and over again that, okay, Paul does say
yeah,
to be in the world and not of the world,
yeah,
but he doesn't say don't be in the world.
yeah,
You still have to be in the world. You still have to function in the world. If you want to cloister yourself and, build a compound, you're going to be a cult.
yeah.
That's not what the true church is. That's not what the Church of Jesus Christ is. It's not a
Well,
cult. It
and
is it is a ministry to the whole world.
yeah, and you can't help God redeem something you won't have anything to do with.
Exactly. Exactly.
No, if you think the world's broken, you're right, but you're not going to be the means by which it can be fixed if you don't actually get your hands dirty.
If you don't engage it. Yeah. And which
No,
you have to. Yeah.
and there was this beautiful scene that probably you've had this experience. I know I have as a pastor, but I just loved it because it is kind of a very easily missed function of the beauty of ministry and the beauty of the church. He is desperate. Father Judd and Blanc are desperate to figure out this murder, of course, and this mystery, and they call uh, a store to get information. And the woman asks if the father would pray for with her, and the father stops everything, goes into another room, and spends clearly a good chunk of time listening to her and praying with her.
Yeah.
And in my head, that's just like this beautiful scene that could easily be thrown away, but that is the essence of what we're called to do. We're called to allow grace to break in even when it's not convenient for us.
It's amazing that people outside of the clergy, and here's a revelation for you folks. Um, Pastors get to experience those sacred moments an awful lot more than you realize.
Yeah,
So many times, and it can happen anywhere. It doesn't have to be a phone call. It happens on the street. You run into somebody in the grocery store, whatever it is. Yeah, I've had the experience. I think all of us that, well, I'm one of the few that wear a collar, but all of us that, that claim that title,
yeah,
I think we've all had that experience at one point or another. And it's with people and people you don't know.
yeah,
If people find out you're a pastor, all of a sudden, hey, would you pray for me about whatever,
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's this beautiful moment that could easily be missed, but to me, it really underlines again what I think the work of the church is. Here's this ordinary situation where you could have easily dismissed this woman and said, "Look, I've got more stuff, important stuff to do." But he shifted gears and he said, "No, she needs prayer. She needs God's grace. She needs to know someone loves her. I'm going to give her that time."
Right.
And again, it's to me, it's a just beautiful kind of moment of what church work can be and the power of the church can have. And to me, it made me think a lot of an earlier scene where Father Judd is welcomed by Monsignor Wicks by Wicks saying, "Welcome to my church."
Yeah. Have you now? Let me ask. Now, this is personally for you, John. Have you gotten that beat down from your board?
I've gotten I didn't get it from I got it from once a trustee president. He
Okay.
was upset with something I was doing, and he said, "This is my church." And I go, "No, it's Jesus's church."
Oh no, no, no. I got that. I personally got that beat down from my decom years ago
Oh
when I said
wow.
something about my. I was in a decom. That's the District Committee on Ordained Ministry. For those who don't understand, it's part of that process going on to ordination. I was meeting with the decom, and I said something about my church, and I went, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! It's not your church. It's God's church. You're just appointed to serve there."
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So what you said.
Yeah, and sometimes you'll see it in the liturgies that we get in our book of worship. It'll say, "This is not," and it'll have a blank for your church. This is not the church I serve now, Lacey United Methodist Church's table. This is Jesus's table.
Yeah.
And the idea is a very profound one, but it's something that parishioners and pastors can lose sight of, which is this place is something you're stewarding, you're taking care of. You've been given permission and the honor to be a leader or be a person in this community. But this is ultimately Christ's community, not yours.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's, I think let me further say onto that for anybody who may watch this and you're thinking about going into the ministry, how can I talk you out of it? Um, which is what my first clergy mentor asked me. But it's not something you do because it pays well or because it provides you a home or because this is because it requires so much more of you. And this is, I think, what this film does well, okay, with
Yeah,
the contrast between Father Judd and Monsignor Wicks, is that Father Judd understands that he has given himself, his entirety,
yeah,
to the church, which you see in the denouement, in the after the climax, and what happens afterwards. You see that. I'm not giving that away, but you see how that he embraces that versus Monsignor Wicks, who really seemed to use the church as his own personal playground,
yeah.
his own uh, sandbox, if you will,
Yeah,
and everybody else is playing in my sandbox on my rules or get out.
it was definitely this idea of it. The church was there to build him up in an unhealthy way. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Um, so what else?
I loved again. I don't want to give the ending away, but
It's
I
hard.
loved I love the ending so much. It's honestly worth. I mean, I think the movie itself is just incredible, but literally the last 10 minutes is just to me. It's one of the best kind of statements of the beauty of Christianity, the beauty of the difference the church can make in people's lives,
Yeah.
why things like confession and things are important,
Yeah.
and in the last again someone confesses, obviously this is a murder mystery, someone confesses, um, and at the end of the movie the person's still struggling to ask for forgiveness, and um, Father Judd finally looks at her, holds the person's hand and says, let go of the hatred, or let the hatred go.
Yeah.
And you see this clenched fist release. And again, it's a beautiful symbol of this idea of forgiveness. You know, uh, this idea of why we confess to one another. Why the tradition. I know the Orthodox community and the Roman Catholic community has a tradition of priests hearing confessions, but in all Christian denominations, pretty much, there are usually times every week in my service we do a prayer of confession. And the idea is confession is good for us. We need to let things go. We need to unpack things. We need to not let the anger and the hatred kind of fester. We need to ask forgiveness. We need to give forgiveness. Um, all of those things. And to me, confession is such a beautiful thing that unfortunately has gotten a bad rap because we sometimes act like it's invading people's privacy or something some people have used to really kind of make people feel bad, but that's not the purpose of confession. The purpose of confession is to recognize you're being you're being a prisoner to this thing you won't let go of or to this thing that you're doing.
But it's interesting because, again, you see that contrast with the two priests in this because Monsignor Wicks obviously takes people's confessions
And he
and
uses them
uses it
against them.
against them.
Yeah,
He leverages with his core group, he leverages it for
yeah,
power. And with
yes,
anyone else, he uses it basically to chase them out of the
yeah.
church.
Scare him off so he won't lose power. Yeah,
Yeah. So it's, yeah. And what would they say that there's, confession's good for the soul, right? But realistically, I mean, just not carrying around the sins that you harbor, the grudges that you keep, that those things really do. It sounds cliche. I get it. In this modern culture, it sounds cliche. Oh, yeah, sure, but trust me when I tell you it absolutely is a freeing thing. I've done it. I've been there. I've experienced it. It's important. Um, and I think particularly in the Protestant church, you noted it, we don't do it enough.
yeah,
We don't do it enough. And I mean, look, we say the confession every time we do communion, but look, it's the same confession.
yeah,
It's gotten to be rote for a lot of people.
yeah,
It's just we confess blah 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 blah. Like they could say it in their sleep.
yeah.
Doesn't say what's really going on. It's not, I don't know that it's as well, I'm certain it's not as effective
Yeah.
as like a personal confession would be. Confection, that would be a whole different thing. Uh,
That's technically what happens at communion. So
anyway, um, there was another scene when you talk about confession, you brought this up in the notes, where rather Monsignor Wicks had been using confession to Father Judd as this kind of tool, this subjugation tool
yeah,
almost, right? For a long period of time until Father Judd did a little background research
yeah,
and found out that the things that Father Wicks were confessing were not possible for
yeah,
him to do. And it became this confession fight.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
really fascinating.
Yes.
Like my confession's better than yours, I don't know.
Well, to me, again, it's this idea of what, again, in the Orthodox and Catholic tradition, confession is a sacrament. It is, and
Yes.
even though we see it differently in the Methodist Church, I would argue that I like the way the Episcopal Church talks about the other five traditional sacraments, which is they call them the sacraments of the Church, and then communion and baptism the sacraments of Jesus. And I think that's an interesting distinction because I really do believe those things can have real power. Like I anoint every time I go to the hospital. I believe that really makes a difference in people's lives. I think the times where people will confess to me, I really feel like I've seen it make a difference in their lives. So it is important to remember confession is a place that really can transform souls, but you can also use it to be abusive. And you see that with Wicks. He's using it as a punching bag, he's using it as a means to kind of basically push Father Judd away, you know.
Because it certainly seems like that's what he's trying to do, right? He's trying to confess the worst of things to make this guy just go, hey, I can't be here. I got to get. Uh, and there's some stuff here that we could talk about, but it gets real close to giving the story away, and the story
Yeah,
is still too new to want to give
yeah.
too much of it away.
Yeah, there,
So
there. We could do a couple episodes on this. There's a lot here. You know.
there really is. And I think ultimately, while I don't think this is a great movie. I think as far as mystery films go, it missed the mark at some points.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe that's my clergy bias.
Yeah.
I'll admit to that. But I think it's a fun enough movie that if you want to, you got 2.5 hours to sit in front of the TV and watch a Netflix movie, it's probably worth your time.
Yeah.
So,
One thing that I did think I wanted to mention before we go,
sure.
because I do think it's a big part of the movie, and I do think it's a good critique, is the way we easily abuse each other through social media.
Yeah, well,
And
there's one character that's just all about social media in this film. Yeah.
and basically the idea that you are guilty until you're proven innocent. And I do think we need to recognize that too oftentimes with social media we jump to the person's bad without actually knowing the story. And
Right.
that's a huge part of this movie. With the Father Judd character, he becomes a villain before people know what's going on. And I do
Yeah,
think it's,
he gets blamed for the murder before,
yeah.
yeah.
So I do think that critique of social media, I'm seeing critiques of social media more and more, and I think that's great because as much as I think it can be a blessing, I do think we are abusing it, and we need to think about how we use it.
It has its advantages. I will say that a couple of weeks ago we started promoting something on Facebook. We had a breakfast with Santa here at the church, and when the day actually came, we had 45 kids who were
Yeah.
not from this church, came from the community to have breakfast with Santa, which was outstanding because it was the first
Yes.
time we ever did it, you know? So that's the good side of it.
Yes.
The bad side of it, as you noted, is the way we tend to treat each other. And the keyboard warriors who hide behind a screen and a screen name and will just find, well, that's a convenient way I can abuse people. And that's a heart problem, isn't it? It's a sin problem. That's in here,
Yep.
you know. So, well, then who do we convict for that?
Yep. Us.
Ourselves, right? Yeah.
Be back at
But
you.
it's a good point, John. It's a good
Yep.
point. So, I think we're going to wrap up on Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out film, um, with a thumbs up. It's probably worth your time if you want to watch it. And move to what we would like to talk about for next week. Now, I didn't have anything in particular in mind. I know you had mentioned a film before. Maybe you want to talk about that.
I'm not sure which one you're speaking about, so
The one that's on HBO Max streaming right now.
well, I can't
Um,
remember what we talked
was
about.
it the Leonardo DiCaprio film?
Yeah, we could do that, or we could stay with Ryan Johnson. Have you ever seen Looper?
I have, but I'd be happy to watch it again. It's a good film.
Yeah, it is. Whichever one of those you'd rather do.
All right,
The
well,
the first one would be a spicier talk, so it's up to you.
Yeah, I know. I haven't seen. I think what's it called? One Fight After Another or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. One battle after another.
One Battle After Another. I haven't seen it. I've heard about it.
Yeah.
And what I've heard did not inspire me to want to watch it necessarily. Um, but I will not, I'm not going to veto that. But I'd love to watch Looper again. So let's do that one for this week.
Okay,
And then maybe we'll do One Battle After Another next week. How's that sound?
sounds good.
Okay. So then for this week, the film is Looper. I know it stars Bruce Willis
Sure.
and
Joseph Levitt or
yeah, I think that's who it is. Yeah, Joseph
Joseph
Levitt.
Gordon-Levitt. Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Good film. I have seen it before, but yeah, that's a good one. So we'll talk about that for next week, friends. Until next Friday, keep on finding God in the dark. Take care and God bless. We'll see y'all next week. Oh, hey, you made it all the way to the end of the video. Well, thanks for watching. We appreciate your support. And friends, if you find anything that's really wonderful or entertaining or helpful in your Christian walk, we want to encourage you to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share this video with your friends. We publish every Friday morning at 10 a.m. And we hope that you continue to find these videos and these discussions entertaining and informative. Take care and God bless. Bye.